Hey guys, happy Valentine's Day. Today I thought it would be a good idea to, I suppose, have a chat about self-care. This is something that I have been exploring more and more over the last 2 years because it's become almost like a buzzword, I feel, a bit like mindfulness. And while they have both existed for centuries, I feel right now they are things that are of interest to people and that people are becoming more knowledgeable about. And so I wanted to educate myself a little bit more, and I found some interesting things about myself, and I sort of wanted to share them with you all in case they might help or clarify for others out there who might not know much about self-care or who might have very specific views, a bit like I did, about it. So for me, previously, self-care was kind of about spoiling myself. It was booking the holiday, buying the shoes, eating the cake because I deserved it. Even if it went against what I was trying to do, save, declutter my wardrobe, lose weight, those kind of things, it almost became a license to do things I did want to do, but probably weren't in my best interests. And for a while, I kind of felt like, shouldn't self-care be about you? Of course, yes, but be about improvement. And yes, that is what it's about. So I was reading up about it, books, the internet, the whole lot. And I came across this sort of, I suppose, description or explanation of what self-care is. And I don't have it in front of me right now, but basically, to, I suppose, paraphrase, self-care is about replenishing the resources that are running low. And when I read this, it was sort of like a click point for me, insofar as resources was just this word that stood out to me. And then it was almost like after I sort of read that, it kind of all fell into place. And for me, I then identified within self-care that there were sort of, I suppose, like 3 different arms or aspects. There was the basic self-care, the indulgent self-care, which I was all too familiar with, which I'm sure is the case for many of you out there, and then the expanded self-care. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all 3 of them. And I suppose first, to expand a little bit on self-care itself. It's so very easy to identify in others that they need to take a moment to step back, to breathe, to rest. But it can be really, really, really hard to identify that in ourselves, even if we are run ragged, exhausted, and just stressed to the hilt. And that's where I sort of tried to learn a little bit more about the benefits of self-care. So really, when you read about self-care, the passages, the books, the blog posts, they all talk about, use self-care as a way of having a stress-free life, a good emotional balance, a good work-life balance, having energy and focus. And they were all things that I have been searching for a very long time. And of course, sometimes you do achieve one of them or maybe 2 of them, but altogether did seem challenging for me. And when I saw the benefits of self-care, and when I thought about the self-care I had been practicing, so going on the holiday, sort of buying the shoes, the bags, the chocolate cake, drinking the 3 bottles of wine, in the moment, I enjoyed those things for sure, but they didn't really have a lasting long-term effect on my life. Apart from maybe the holidays, which are of course important, but maybe not when you've maxed out your credit card and you're seriously fretting about how you're going to pay for it as you get on the plane to go home. So this is when I really started to get into this idea that indulgent self-care, it's a bit like the food pyramid. You know, in the food pyramid, and like they put the sweets and the chocolates in the smallest section on top? Yeah, that's kind of how I like understood it in my brain. And that the basic and the extended self-care, and their terms I've kind of put on these aspects myself. I'm not saying I created these aspects of self-care. I did not. I have not created anything in self-care. It is just more so that I could almost like organize it in my brain. As many of you know, I love organizing, and especially in my brain. Almost for me to understand it better, I have to give it a category or a section that it would go in my brain. So the basic self-care are all things that we all know about. You know, they are sleep routine, diet, exercise, breaks, you know, resting. And we're all aware that these things are important in our lives, for sure. I personally had never associated them with self-care. I just kind of associated them with, yes, they are necessary things that people talk about that are good for you. Again, you see, it's connecting the dots. For some reason, my brain doesn't always connect the dots. So I kind of have to, you know, put it in a neat little box to do it for it. When I sort of identified these as, you know, being important in self-care, and that, you know, the chocolate cake and the holiday and all that are good, but not as important, it just clicked for me. Now, I appreciate that depending on your point in life, certain things, for example, like establishing a healthy sleep routine, which is very important, might be difficult. And you might think that somebody, for example, if you are a married person with children, dogs, cats, sick family, a big house, and a full-time job, and you know, you want to leave your job and restudy into something else, you might feel a lot of pressure, and you might be sacrificing precious sleep in order to clean the house, get the kids ready, cook, take care of your family, you know, learn a new skill. And while obviously those things are of course important, if you're not filling your own cup, how can you take care of other people? And that's really what self-care is taking care of yourself so you can take care of others and yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's the same for, you know, your diet and your exercise. Going outside, there is a big window here beside me, there is a green in front of me. Sometimes when I'm stressed and overwhelmed, I will take the dog and I will go out into the green just for 5 or 10 minutes. We'll run around, she'll play, she thinks it's excellent, and I feel better. You know, it's just taking yourself out of the environment and getting fresh air, and that's kind of the important thing. Yes, removing yourself from the stressful, overwhelming environment is always good, but going outside for some fresh air, regardless of the time of day, will actually make you feel better. Diet is hugely important to your health, to your well-being, to everything. So operating on the self-care of, oh yeah, I'm gonna have 6 bottles of wine at the weekend, you know, a takeaway and a large chocolate cake because I've had a stressful week. That's not really self-care. And it was the self-care I had been sort of like operating under, and like I say, it didn't serve me. If anything, in the moment it was great, it was amazing. Then come Monday or even Sunday, you're like, oh my god, I feel awful, I'm hungover, I'm bloated, you know, I probably put on about 6 pounds, you know, it just wasn't worth it afterwards. And I really believe if something you're doing under the pretense of self-care doesn't have a lasting positive effect on you or your life, really isn't self-care. And I suppose that's kind of the message that I wanted to share with you all today. Now, talking more about the expanded self-care. So for me, this encompasses things that really are an investment in you and in your future. So for example, they would be sort of like future planning, financial planning, education, and organization. So I'm a great believer that an organized home creates a happy, peaceful environment. My husband, bless him, love him to pieces. Happy Valentine's Day, babe. He is not the most organized person at all. He's quite messy and disorganized. To be honest, it's probably one of his most frustrating aspects. But over the years, we are 14 and a half years together, nearly 12 years married. I have always kept an organized, tidy home. And he has just learnt to put things back. That's kind of the rule. I don't expect him to necessarily organize it, although I do ask for his input if he wants to give it. But he has to return everything to its place. And I have to say, even when he has a messy, disorganized moment, because everything has its place in our home, it's so very easy to put things back. So of course our house gets messy, and of course it gets disorganized. And sometimes you literally have to say to yourself, okay, that room has just gone to pot, let's start over again, and we're going to have to redo it. And fair play to him, he does help with those situations. But generally speaking, I think our home works well because it's organized for us. My level of organization may not be your level. Your level might be down here in comparison to mine, or it might be up here in comparison to mine. Whatever works for you, but definitely organizing your room, your space, your office, your handbag, whatever it might be, will have a very positive effect, and it is a form of self-care. Planning for your future as I'm getting older, I'm 36 and a half now. I'll be 37 in June, which, to be honest, when I hear those words, I'm like, really? Am I that old? Not that I think that's old, but I mean, in a way, sometimes I still feel like I'm 16. And I'm realizing that while I've achieved great things in my life and done great things, that I've never really thought very far into the future, like long-term stuff, like long-term savings or long-term plans. And they are things that are becoming more and more important to me. And maybe that's just because of the time of life I'm at. But again, whether it's a 3, 5, or 10-year plan or goal, having those types of plans or goals are important. And if you're wondering how to achieve goals, I did do a video last year on goal setting and how I achieve them. And as most of you will know, I've gotten quite good at achieving my goals. That sounds so braggy. But again, it is something that I have worked on. It has taken a very long time. But I will link that video for you above if you're interested in that sort of thing. Financial planning is another big thing that I've never really done. Now, I've been very fortunate to always have enough money for whatever I needed to do. So in that case, you know, I've been lucky. But, you know, if James was to lose his job, you know, and I was to lose my income, we'd be screwed. You know, like, yeah, of course you'd limp along for a couple of months, but we'd be screwed. So those type of things have become really important. And it is about self-care for me, my family, and for our future. The same with education. I didn't take the traditional college route after secondary school or high school. I did go to college, I've been several times, but generally I went to, like, I suppose here in Ireland we call them private colleges, so who offer slightly different courses. Often they're part-time or at night, and you pay for the privilege, you pay heftily for the privilege to attend. Not as heftily as the US, but in Ireland, where education is free, to attend one of these colleges you pay, you know, what's considered a lot. But education doesn't necessarily mean going to college. It could be reading or a local course, you know. It doesn't have to be this massively big thing. Big things are amazing, especially if you want to change career, or if you're very interested in a specific topic and you'd like to become almost like a semi-expert in it. I'm all for that. But education can just be as simple as just educating yourself further in things that you're interested in. For example, like me being more interested, or not more interested, for example, like me exploring self-care more, and learning more about goals and goal setting. They were things that I wanted to do and was struggling with, and so I educated myself more. So it doesn't have to be this massive big project or course that you take on, but I think continuous education is really beneficial to everybody. So I suppose in opening this conversation about self-care, I wanted to inspire anybody out there who had been wondering about it, or who is going through a rough time and who is possibly looking for ways to help themselves. And I do think self-care really is about helping yourself. And it's not selfish, because you're helping yourself so that you can be a better person and support others. And I do think that's a really rounded way of looking at self-care. It's identifying that you have a need, filling that need, and then not being afraid to share with others the resources that you've replenished. I'd love to know your thoughts on self-care and how you, I suppose, practice it. Were you like me, and still like me, on the indulgent side, or have you always been aware of the kind of the basic and the extended side that I describe? It's always interesting, you know. I'm one of these people that I sometimes feel like my mind is very closed. I will know of maybe a couple of ways of doing things, and somebody might introduce me into something new, and I'm like, oh my god, I never thought of it like that. And for me, this basic and expanded self-care that I've identified, like I say, I have not identified them, they exist, but you know, newly identified to me, they were like light bulb moments. And so when you're somebody who's always known about these or accepted them, or they've just been part of your life, to perhaps meet somebody like me, you'd be like, how could you not know this? But there are people like out there that don't, and that's kind of why I'm sharing this. I'm not pretending to be an expert in this field at all, as you can see. But if you were to glance over my post about my goals and focuses for this year, you will see that they are largely all about self-care. And I suppose in one sense, most goals kind of are, in a way. But yes, sorry, I am completely rambling now. Another great self-care thing that I do think is important is, pardon me, spending time with friends and family. I do think connection and communication is very important. And that's exactly what I'm off to do right now. I'm going to meet one of my lovely friends for lunch and catch up. She recently lost her aunt, and I haven't seen her since she passed away. So I'm very much looking forward to giving her a big hug because she gives the best hugs. But yes, so that's what I'm off to do. But do let me know in the comments below what it is you do to practice self-care, or what's your understanding of self-care. I'd love to open a sort of a conversation about it. Thank you so much for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And happy Valentine's Day again, and I shall see you next week with another video.